And it looks like we are live. Let's do, of course, our customary check. How is everyone doing this evening? I hope everyone is doing well. And yeah, it looks like we're live on YouTube or live on Facebook, as always. So, just to go over, we're in the spring season. Yes, the potential for winter storms is dead. I think this should be clear. I know that there's some individuals out there trying to push that idea. Yes, even for the ski slopes in New England, your chance of seeing a snow event is getting smaller and smaller. So as a result, we're going to be changing up some of the features in our live chat. We're going to go over some books that I like. I picked out one for this evening that I think are really good to pick up, especially if you are looking to learn more about meteorology. Some of them are a little bit more, let's say, detailed, but they're really good to get. And I wish I had when I was a teenager. So it's a good reference for you to start out and learn. Um, and some are very simple. So I'll be sharing all those books as we move on through the spring, summer. I'm going to do one book every week because then it kind of stretches things out, allows me to cover a lot of different topics and find new books that you might be looking for. Also, we're going to, of course, answer all the questions that are in the live chat. Of course, naturally, premium consulting members get their questions answered first and completely, and then we'll go check out social media. So we have a couple of topics here that we're going to cover. So let's dive right into it. And there we go. All right. So first of all, talking about books. I just got this on Christmas from my wife, who is amazing. Of course, this is the Atmospheric Oscillations. This is a great book if you want to start to really understand things like the MJO and different oscillations in the atmosphere, especially with tropical forcing. It focuses a lot on the sub-seasonal and seasonal variability and predictability. There you go. Now, look, it's a little technical if you're just starting out, but I always say it's good to start out with a technical book and just kind of start getting understanding to the lingo. And the one thing I love about this book that I think is really great for a lot of younger kids out there who are just starting to learn is that the graphics in this, or in the illustrations, are absolutely wonderful. And they really give you the detail. Even if you don't understand the equations and you're not ready for the calculus, you can at least get a visual representation of what's going on in the atmosphere. It gives you all the references so you can look at the different studies just to start learning them. Believe me, you want to start learning and start diving into these studies and start reading them when you're in high school, because when you're in college, literally the first semester, you're going to be asked to start reading a lot of these reports and a lot of these analysis and take things from them. And the sooner you learn how to read from them and the sooner you get comfortable reading them, the better you'll do in your class, especially like Met 102 and stuff like that. We start talking about synoptic meteorology and classes like that that usually hit your freshman year. Also, it's good to get used to that because you're going to need that for your chemistry class and physics class. Chem 101, that's where you kind of basically blow the curve out because you're used to mathematics and you got a lot of people taking that as a gen ed for their first semester. But overall, you want to get used to reading those types of studies. And this book will really help you do that, along with understanding how the MJO works and how the tropical force works. So I would strongly suggest picking up this book. It's roughly around 150 bucks, but it's well worth it. And it is a type of book that will last in your library for decades. So yeah, it's a little pricey up front. It might be a birthday gift for that teenager who's going into atmospheric science for a freshman year, but it's the type of book that will last you a lifetime. So it's well worth it. So that is my book selection for this week. I'll have another one next week. Talking about things that make my brain hurt. Let's talk about the COP30, COP30. This is the UN's climate change summit. And nothing says saving the earth and propping up Captain Planet like cutting down and destroying the rainforest. Yes, these idiots here decided to cut down a large swath of the rainforest to build a road that is going to be, what was the word? A 4-lane highway that is going to be environmentally favorable. You know what would be environmentally favorable? Not cutting down the rainforest. So, nothing says saving the earth like cutting down a very important forest that is already under attack, that we need to grow and expand, not cut down. But, the people that go to this conference who, collectively all typically earn a lot more than we do, most people here, and have a really fun time of lecturing us of, how much we use our energy, and the fact that you might have a gas power range are going to still lecture you after doing this nonsense. As an atmospheric scientist, when I discuss climate change, which is a real thing, and discuss the impacts of using fossil fuels, this infuriates me because you know what? The people that say that it's bogus and that it's a fraud or don't believe it, but it's like some sort of conspiracy. This gives them weight because what type of freaking idiot would do this? This is insane. Absolutely insane. I could not believe, I nearly fell out of my chair when I read this. The absolute epic stupidity that has to that has to go into doing something like this. You can't like go in another direction. How about move it to a different city if you can't handle it, Brazil? I don't know. But I sure as hell wouldn't want to cut down the rainforest if you're trying to save the planet, right? So that is my idiotic news story of the week for atmospheric science. I'm going to try and find a new one each week that hopefully I won't like completely blow my mind and give me an aneurysm. But when I see this stuff, it really pisses me off because there's something to say about being able to discuss these important issues with the general public. And the general public, I mean, most of you guys are absolutely awesome, but let's face it, the general public may not have the best education in terms of scientific uh, topics. And that's fine. Hey, look, I'm not an artist. And there's people who go to art school who are amazing. I draw stick figures. Everyone has their capabilities and things that they're really good at. Some people cook. I am lucky I don't kill anyone when I cook. So you see, I mean, although I am really good at grilling. Um, my point is that if you want to talk and discuss something from a position of authority. When I talk to you guys, it's considered an authority, right? What I don't want to do is tell you you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't drive this or you shouldn't cook on this thing. But hey, let's cut down the rainforest because we want to build a bigger highway. You basically undercut authority in being able to say this is important because people who aren't educated in this topic, they look at this and rightfully so say, well, this must be BS, because how can you possibly be concerned about the earth and concerned about climate change when you're cutting down one of the most important aspects of regulating our environment and the earth's climate, which is the rainforest in Brazil. So that's, if you say, hey, I don't believe it, I understand why when you see nonsense like this. But it is an important topic, and I'm always happy to have that discussion and that debate and go over the science whenever I'm asked. But this is uh just epic stupidity du jour. So let's talk about the pattern overall. And I want to cover the polar vortex for one last time, just because, well, there's been a lot of talk about how the polar vortex splitting is going to cause a chilly weather pattern. And, some people using historic examples for winter storms. You know who you are. Um, that's going to fail royally. And the reason why is because the polar vortex weakening is all focused towards Eurasia. But what's really cool that's happening right now is that the influence on the troposphere is fading away. Now, this is normal for this time of year because we're in spring. What's going on in spring? Well, we have more direct sunlight. And why is that important? Well, we talk about the sun angle a lot, and it's not just for the mid latitudes and 850 millibars for snowfall forecasting. When you have more direct sunlight, you're evenly warming up the northern hemisphere. And by evenly warming it up, you're reducing the thermal gradient in those pockets where you can get stratospheric warming and stratospheric cooling. Instead, it evenly starts to warm. So you lose your gradient. And when you lose your gradient, you start to lose the difference in heights and pressures, and you lose your wind component. So as a result, you get this wonky, fading, collapsing polar vortex signature. Now, if this was December, um, unfortunately, this would also mean that China would get a hell of a winter weather period, and so would Europe. We would get nothing in this scenario. So, this is why when they talk about the polar vortex weakening, collapsing, orientation, location matters quite a bit. So when I look at this, this tells me, hey, look, this is going to be a generally, uh, I would say, a warm spring pattern, but at the same time with a polar vortex influence out here and a fading 500 millibar anomaly, I would not be surprised we get a couple of backdoor cold fronts creating havoc with the forecast, especially for New England and the northern half of the northern mid-Atlantic. Like, for example, Long Island, Connecticut, northeast New Jersey, central New Jersey, maybe. Philadelphia, and if you want to go to consistent warm conditions, you want to head towards Philadelphia. That's where you are really going to see some nice weather. So the stratospheric influence is fading away. Now, tropical forecasting, we were just talking about this, and I've been actually using this book quite a bit to go over the MJO influences and evolution. And right now we're in phase 1-2. Now, in terms of temperatures, I really don't like using the MJO in this scenario. It doesn't line up very well, but it does with the moisture transport. And right now we're in a favorable moisture transport where this doesn't mean we're going to get days and days of rain because we're just not in that type of environment yet, or we may not be at all for the spring and summer. But what this tells me, when you go into phases 1 and 2, and then work your way back to phase 8, 7, and 8, that tells me that we're going to have an active subtropical jet stream. And that tells me that we're going to have to be on guard for severe weather. There's going to be some nasty weather events. We have one that's possibly setting up for over the next 48 hours. And unfortunately, it looks like the focus is going to be the plains, the Mississippi River Valley, Tennessee River Valley, maybe the Ohio River Valley, but I think more towards the Tennessee River Valley and down towards the Gulf Coast, where we're going to have some pretty impressive severe weather events for this entire spring and probably the summer, based on what I'm seeing here with the tropical forcing. We don't have a La Nina anymore. That's dead. We don't really have strong signals for El Nino. It's kind of like this muted, warm, neutral type of environment that's starting to take shape. So you're getting a lot of muted signals, and that creates a lot of havoc with forecasting, not to mention everything else that's going on with data collection and whatnot. So when I'm seeing this, I see an active subtropical jet stream, but not a significant heavy rainfall type of signal that you might get when you're looking at some of the anomaly forecasts with this. What I see is more of a pattern where it's dry for several days, and then you get that massive cold front with a half an inch to as much as 2.5 inches of rain, which, if you get enough of them, can start to add up. But right now we're in such a deficit, we really need just a parade of those type of cold fronts. I'm not seeing that just yet. When I look at these factors and look at the 500 millibar pattern, again, this aspect right here supports an active subtropical jet stream. Very progressive, very fast moving. Your polar jet stream's caught up here. When I see this signal up here and I see this confluence here, This tells me, hey, watch out for backdoor cold fronts and easterly winds. It's going to create a lot of havoc in your forecasting. This is probably a bit overdone, but I like the idea of just shortwave after shortwave marching their way through. I don't really like an idea of blocking this up, though. This is a great example on the European where it's just kind of going a little bit too aggressive with this type of evolution. But what I like instead is this upper level low probably a little bit weaker, probably more aligned to like what this is, and a pattern where everything just keeps on marching along. Stay away from blocking scenarios until you can actually get one locked in, because this has been doing this 10 to 15 days out for a good 6 months now. It might be an error with some of the physics and the model guidance. The AI model guidance, which is based mostly on statistics, is also having trouble with this. The GFS is just off in la la land. It produces warm weather, then a blizzard, and it's all over the place. So I'm just kind of throwing that guidance out completely right now. But this is a pattern that to me is active. It's going to keep us on our toes. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of days where we're going to be in a roller coaster going 40s up to the 70s and down to the 40s. Typical March and early April. So right now, we have an easterly wind starting to develop. Onshore flow. It's onshore flow season. Why do we have an onshore flow season? Well, the coldest environment, the coldest source of air in this weather pattern is no longer Canada, because that's getting cut off, right? So the next most dense air mass that we're going to be dealing with is from the Gulf of Maine and right off the coast, our coastal waters. And so, whenever we get a chance here to support a northeasterly and easterly wind, it's really going to lock in with a lot of dense air coming in. So, that typically leads to a lot of low clouds. Now, there's been a lot of talk about precipitation to the north of us. Really hasn't been all that impressive at all. Take a look at the observations here. You got one area with some lighter rain. That's about it. The GFS was really going crazy with some snowfall ideas. But the reason why that failed epically is because, well, there's a lot of dry air in the lower mid levels, around 9 to 25 millibars. So a lot of this is not reaching ground. You got a little bit of maybe some sleet, a little bit of grapple over in the northern zones here, but nothing really all that significant and barely picking up. So this is pushing to the north of us. It's going to stay to the north of us. If you're in northern Connecticut, you might pick up a few showers. But when you take a look at the infrared satellite picture, again, everything's moving west to east. Very progressive in the mid levels. But it's counter to what we're seeing in the lower levels with this easterly wind. So what we end up with is start getting a lot of low clouds. And when we take a look at our upper level pattern currently, there's our note about the data. Okay, so in this setup, this screams of strong high pressure systems marching to the north of us and that onshore flow threat. Why is this so important? Well, that easterly wind is going to be locked in over the next 90 hours. Until we get maybe to Saturday night into Sunday where we get more of a southerly wind. And we'll talk about that strong cold front in a moment. But you might have heard that we have a lunar eclipse on the way. And there's a lot of talk about it. It's going to be like a red moon. It's going to look really cool if you want to be up around midnight tomorrow. But there's a problem with that easterly wind. Again, we're expecting it to start showing up around 11:57 p.m. Showing up really begins around 109 and then totally at 226. Unfortunately, during that time period, well, unfortunately with that easterly wind, it transports a lot of low clouds. So if you are in the interior, let's say around the Poconos and Catskills, you got a so shot of seeing it. If you're around here, around the Philadelphia, New York City metro, sorry, you're missing out on this one. Just too much cloud cover in the way. It's not looking good. You might pick up a few breaks at the very tail end of it, but it's going to be difficult. So if you want to see the lunar eclipse, you want to head towards northwestern Connecticut, Central Hudson River Valley, and the Poconos and Catskills. Even then, you're going to be dealing with some cloud cover. So, fortunately, not looking the best for that event. But hey, there'll be more of them. Now, as far as our severe, well, not severe for us, but the severe weather event to the west of us, this is going to be an impressive setup here, especially for the Southern Plains in this scenario. By the time this cold front reaches our neck of the woods, it won't be as impressive, but it's certainly going to feature a very strong jet streak. So, a lot of people are picking up on this, on the potential for some severe thunderstorms and some potential tornadoes out of this down towards the southern portions of the Tennessee River Valley and towards the Gulf Coast. On Sunday evening, the cold front will be moving through our neck of the woods, especially towards the late evening. Unlike the last event, the strongest jet streaks are going to be well to the north of us. We got enough strong winds to make it somewhat interesting, maybe 30, 40 mile per hour winds. But the real thing that stands out is the signal here of a convective line showing up at 700 millibars and also with the precipitable water value. Now, when I see this, and again, this is Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. There we go. Look at that convective signal right around midnight. Around this time period, when you have a cold front moving through and this convective signal showing up with the kind of bullseyes here, okay, with the precipitable water values, the low level the low level instability in the atmosphere is such that you're really going to be limited. Okay. It's going to be mostly stable, but the mid levels are going to be capable of creating some mixing. Now, we're still a little bit too far out to use any of the mesoscale models, which is what I would focus on to get any more details on this. But overall, this looks like a scenario where it's going to be pretty progressive and fast moving. So we might be talking about roughly a half an inch. Now, for the weekend overall, Saturday is going to be fine, maybe a few isolated showers. Sunday is where we're going to see a steady increase in cloud cover and showers, but your main event in terms of the thunderstorms won't be until the late evening hours after 8 p.m. and then on through about 4 a.m. For the northern mid Atlantic. It could be a rough morning rush hour on Monday. So, not the best way to start the week. I'm not seeing, though, a lot of severe weather out of this at all. So, that is pretty much everything I have for tonight. Now, I'm going to take all your questions and we'll see how many we have. And then, of course, we could also, I see also some baseball questions as well. So, that should be fun. As we get to that time of year, of course, we'll have Mets games on while I'm watching it and get my reaction to that. So we'll also be doing that this spring and summer. Let's see. Card starts off the questions with, oh yeah, and we'll get to social media after all the premium members. Better than the Yankee staff, but that isn't saying much right now. Hey, you never know when it comes to pitching and baseball. You never know. Well, all right, the injuries don't help, but just to be fair, you never know. I mean, last year's Mets pitching comes starting off the season. If you said that you get almost to the World Series, I would have thought you were insane. I was hoping just to get to the playoffs. So you never know. The day 5 SPC forecast is rather impressive. Very rare to get 15% chance of severe weather in our neck of the woods 5 days out. Let's pull this up because I want to pull up the data and then we'll take a look at it. Let's see, we'll go to the convective outlook and day 5. Now, day 5 is Sunday. Okay, so let me share this real fast so everyone knows what we're talking about here. Under the SPC, if you go to, again, the SPC is free, it's NOAA, well, taxpayer. Under convective outlooks, you go down here, go down to current day 4 5, and you're out here. I think this is way overdone. I'm sorry. You're getting an impact towards the evening hours and you're trying to drive this, I don't buy it. Now, if you're saying Virginia, Central and Western North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, sure. Okay. You got that convective influence. I think this is way too overdone for the Northern Mid Atlantic. And I think most likely as we get closer, they're going to scale it back. Um, but I mean, just my opinion, based on what I'm seeing here, especially during this time of year in March, you're having a cold front move through towards midnight. That's very difficult to buy into any type of severe weather solution. And also, the low level jet streak is going to be found well to the north of you. So, again, not buying it. Um, let's say, oh, don't forget all the private jets that fly to the conference. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing that pisses me off because there is very strong scientific reasoning that we can go over about climate change and all that stuff. I know some people call it a fraud. Some people say the end of the world is near, all that stuff in between. But this doesn't help. It's just mind-boggling how stupid it is. Chopping down forests to build solar farms and wind farms simply does not make sense to me, especially given forests remove CO2. Yep, I mean that's we could definitely find the solar panels we could put that on the houses, on the roadways and stuff like that. So yeah, there's some things I just don't I'd find better ways. Did you see the Orlando area tornado which hit the building on a local news network covering the storm live? I did see it, and I was in awe of the focus of the meteorologist who was actually handling that situation. Do you anticipate a lot of cutoff lows this spring, or will there be the usual or even less than usual? Actually, I think there's going to be quite a few upper level lows this year. And the reason why is because of that transition. Not as much as you would see with an El Nino, but still a pretty good number marching their way through this year. For those up early, before 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., lunar eclipse early morning on March 14th. Yes, if you can get above the clouds, unfortunately. Uh, let's see here. Thank you for your response to the email. With that being seen now, is Saturday still the best day for traveling from North Jersey towards Cleveland? Uh, yeah, definitely Saturday if you're going to be traveling out towards the Ohio River Valley. You definitely want to do Saturday. Probably on your way back, either way you slice it, the second half of the weekend is going to be stormy from the Ohio River Valley to the northern Mid Atlantic. So Saturday is the best day. But even then, as you head towards the Ohio River Valley in Ohio, you're still going to be dealing with some showers and thunderstorms. So it won't be a dry weekend in that region for the most part, unfortunately. Let's take a look and see what we got on YouTube here. Someone is back. Why do some people believe climate change and global warming aren't real? Um, I think there's multiple reasons why. Some of it is political. Some of it is some people believe that there is always a conspiracy, right? There are some people that will believe that will take a conspiracy out of anything and everything, and so therefore they don't believe this, the government's controlling that, and so on and so forth. Um, and then, unfortunately, there are some people who have taken the issue and go into these extremes. And so, when someone who's just kind of in the middle of the road sees someone, I don't know, gluing their hand onto a painting or disrupting a sporting event, they don't think, like, this is an important topic created and brought to us by logical people, but instead you got some wacko, right, running around creating havoc or burning down Tesla stores or whatever. um, so it loses support. Not that the scientific reasoning loses support, because it doesn't. But when you're talking to someone who's not based in the world of taking in all the scientific data and reading all the reports and understanding some things, and again, science isn't foolproof. Science is the pursuit of truth. And sometimes you're going to get some things wrong. Bless you. That doesn't mean that there's some conspiracy to control your life. I mean, there's some people out there who do, and I'm not going to deny that's the case, but if you don't have a strong background in understanding all the science, and then you see something like this in the news, you lose your credibility. Okay, and that's really important. Whether that's fair or not, that's just a reality. That's just the world that we live in. What would have happened if we saw a major sun stratospheric warming event during the early mid part of winter, with the orientation of the cold being centered over the U.S.? We definitely would have had a nor'easter. Definitely, it would have definitely buckled the polar jet stream and led to a robust negative NAO. If the polar vortex split towards North America, which, given where it was during that time period, it'd be a good shot that it did. That would. Seems like there hasn't been much blocking since last August. Well, remember, that's because we've been in a westerly QBO, right? So now we're transitioning towards an easterly QBO or negative. We're going to see more blocking, but I think it's a little bit too fast. Anything on Facebook or X? Oh boy, let's see what we got here. This one's on which one?
Facebook.
Facebook. Think spring is here, winter is over. Yeah, pretty much. What do you think oh draft to put away Salter and
I think it'd be daft to put
oh,
away.
daft. Oh, okay. See, this is what happens when you don't drink enough coffee. This is why my wife is awesome, because she helps me out with this stuff. Um, I would say up that point, I would definitely say that you could probably definitely put away the plow.
Yes.
Salter is more difficult. You know, the problem with salters, and it kind of depends on the client that you have, right? If you have a client that has like a shop, maybe four people show up, and most of it is in the afternoon, yeah, you probably don't need salt. If you're dealing with like a church or a school, you probably want to keep the salter in place just because of that rogue morning in early April that you get a little bit of freezing drizzle, you know, that really it won't create a huge impact for the general public, but you know, you got that one church that opens up at 6 a.m. because they got mass or whatever, and someone's going to slip and fall if you don't have treatment down. So there's always that factor, especially up towards Ulster and whatnot. I would not say, I always say, put away your salters at the same time when your taxes are due, April 15th. Um, but the plow, I think you could definitely move on from. Card would like to add, it's also the distinction between natural cycle and man-made influences, and the claims by some that changes are entirely man-made, and the debate is over. Yeah, I never trust anyone. I don't care what degree they have. Whenever they say the science is settled, science is never settled. The whole point of science is to question and to push and to prod and to say, hey, maybe this works or maybe this factor. And at the same time, if you are a quote unquote skeptic and there's enough data to look at something, it's important to say, hey, maybe I was wrong about this part and I should accept this part because there's overwhelming data to support it. Being a skeptic just to be a skeptic is not being a scientist. You're just being a jackass, to be frank. It's kind of like that person that's always negative no matter what happens. Like you win the lottery, but oh yeah, but you gotta pay taxes. Like, okay, fine, you know. Um, it's good to be skeptical because being skeptical is the very basis of science, but it's not good to be skeptical to the point that you ignore everything in order to fit into your little tunnel, your little box of worldview. If your science is based on worldview or who you vote for, you're not a scientist. Sorry, you're not. Okay. Um, and when I say scientist, that doesn't mean you have to wear a coat and go to college and earn a degree. What I mean by that is that in order to really embrace the scientific method, you have to be willing to say that you're wrong. Okay. That's key. If you're not willing to say that you're wrong, then you're not willing to be a scientist. You're not willing to dive into the scientific process. So, for example, I was skeptical of some aspects of global warming, okay, when I was younger, especially in my 20s and some of my early 30s as well. But as I got more data, I was willing to say, hey, look, I was wrong about this. And so I adjusted. Why? Because I had overwhelming data, right? So I didn't buy the idea of let's see here. Well, I still don't buy the idea that the AMOC is going to collapse. I still don't buy it, but at the same time, there is some interesting data that's showing it's slowing down. It's important to recognize that. So the pursuit of scientific knowledge is not about trying to be right all the time. It's trying to find out what you're wrong about and learning about that and pushing yourself. So you never want to say debate is over. Only an idiot or basically a policymaker says those words. And there is a distinction between natural change and man-made influences. The way you know that we are dealing with man-made influences here, my best example is someone who's taking steroids, right? And considering I'm in the gym a lot, I see this quite a bit. Naturally, you'll get stronger by lifting a lot of weights. So, for example, I'm bench pressing 400 pounds, right? The way that you tell that someone is on steroids is that they get injured very easily and their muscles are out of proportion with the rest of their body. And because of the steroid, it causes your tendons to be much weaker than the rest of your muscles. So you look like something like out of an anime, right? There is that base of strength, and then there's the enhancement. What we're seeing here with man made warming is that enhancement. The base of the warming that we're seeing, very marginal in terms of natural cycle because we should be slightly cooling right now. But the warming we're seeing is driven clearly by the addition of CO2. Okay. And the reason why we know that is that all the other factors that would cause warming up to this point really aren't very strong, including solar factors. Believe me, I've checked. And also volcanic factors. Again, I've checked, I've read it, I studied, I saw the other aspect to it. And we're nowhere near in terms of the solar activity and the volcanic activity that we saw during the Caribbean period and during our more warmer stretches, especially during around the warm stretch around when Roman times. Okay, um, we're nowhere near that type of output, so you can't use that. Yes, we were warmer in the past, but not because everyone was driving around an SUV back when the Roman Empire was going on. So again, you have to take this all in and consider this. And this again doesn't mean that the world is going to burn up into a cinder either. That's a horrible approach as well. Stay away from extremes. That's my point, and be open-minded to ask questions. The answer to the SSW question was very different not too many years ago, where we got the big split towards Asia and we got the Pacific Jet of Doom. And we're basically heading towards that. It just happens to be the springtime season. I win one of the lottery jackpots, or even five out of the Magic Powerball, Mega Ball. I will gladly pay the taxes on it. Well, I'm sure. Let's see. What else do we got here? Do we have anything else in YouTube land? Let's see. Seems like there hasn't been much blocking. Yep. All right. Uh, does it look like Long Island and New York City can see some thunderstorms because of the slight risk? Okay, maybe elevated thunderstorms. Long Island's really difficult this time of year because of Long Island being surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. That creates a stable environment. You have to generate a really unstable air mass to really support thunderstorms this time of year. But once we get to late May, June, July, game on with the right scenarios, right? But right now, not so much. What do we got?
Jeff asked us, but not in the chat, so I almost missed it.
Okay. With the onshore ocean, with the is that oh there it is. With the inshore ocean still in the upper 30s as of this weekend, any warmth this spring should be drive more onshore flow as the warm air rises inland, probably a cooler spring at the shore. Oh, yeah, totally. There is and a lot of low clouds. That's going to be a big theme this spring is low clouds. Not necessarily cold, but more like cool, like raw. That's the word, raw. Okay, where we're in the 50s, some 40s, and then we jack up to the 60s. I would not be surprised to see quite a bit of 70 in Philadelphia and southwest New Jersey, 49 on eastern Long Island. Let's see what else we got here. Bounce back and forth. Let's see here. Do you expect fog to be an issue this spring? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the low clouds, yeah, I definitely do. It's going to be an issue. And unfortunately, it's going to create some havoc with severe weather forecasting as well. I think that the thunderstorm aspect here, here's the thing. Obviously, the further west you are, the better chance you'll see a thunderstorm. I don't see severe thunderstorms out of this for because of the timing of the cold front and time of year, and the fact that the jet streak isn't as impressive. Your best lifting is focused more towards. In fact, the best convective environment is focused to our south. So that's also going to leave a lot of substance over us. I don't see a strong signal, in my opinion. I would not have gone as aggressive as the SPC, in my opinion, in southeastern Pennsylvania. Um, I'd probably cap it at Central Virginia down through Georgia and Florida. I probably would not have gone north of Central Virginia in this scenario, mostly because again, the timing of this cold front when this is moving through, it's really not the best instability around. I'm not really seeing the total totals aren't. These are measurements we use. The total totals aren't very impressive. I'm not seeing a lot of support from a lifting index signal. I'm just and the skew T I did see on the GFS, and again we'll dive into this more over the next 2 days with getting more NAM data. It's still too far out for the NAM, even the long range NAM. Um, Even that's really unimpressive. So, not really seeing a lot here to really get hyped up about, so to speak. How much rain do you expect from the cold front? I think looking at about half an inch to an inch and a half. Someone's going to get 2 inches in one of those heavier downpours in an elevated thunderstorm. But that's pretty much it that I'm seeing here. There is signals that if the cold front slows down, that we could be pushing over 2 inches, but that's kind of been wavering. And again, it doesn't really match up to the weather pattern that we're in. But I do like that everyone will get a solid half an inch out of this. And then, then you'll get those lollipops up to 2 inches, 1.5 inches, stuff like that. These are some great questions, guys. Absolutely. Let's take a look. Let's see what else we got here. So far, so good. Any other questions on Facebook or anything? I see one. Steve, let's close the book on winter. Yeah, I mean, we pretty much have. Unfortunately, there's some people running around on social media, which I have to respond to because then I get like 10 emails on, or there's an uproar on Discord. One individual in particular that constantly is trying to bring up historic winter storms, spring winter storms, and I'm like, I don't get it, man. What the hell are you looking at? You know, it's not there. It just isn't like no. And it comes down to it's unfortunate, but understand that just because you have a major stratospheric warming event doesn't mean it'll produce a winter storm in your backyard. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to explain here. That atmospheric science is not a one-to-one type of enterprise here, where you go from, well, if it does A, it must do B. Because it's not algebra, it's calculus, because you have to factor in chaos and how do these all these features interact. So it's just kind of bad faith to run around claiming that this winter storm potential or colder conditions just isn't panning out. It just isn't realistic. After this cold front, any idea long range on the next precip event? I'm thinking maybe next weekend after this. It seems to be setting up every 5 to 6 days. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Once a week is not going to cut it on restoring the groundwater and providing drought relief. I agree. Right? I mean, I don't see right now, and this is why you have to be really careful with long range guidance and the statistical output of above normal or below normal. Technically, will be above normal in rainfall, but the way that we do it is not the most beneficial for groundwater restoration and for relieving our drought conditions. Yes, we'll get some strong cold fronts and low pressure systems capable of some impressive rainfall in terms of half an inch here, 2 inches there. But what we need really is a steady stream of rainfall. And I know some people don't like this because they like to enjoy the spring weather, but literally what we need is every other day a quarter to a half an inch of rain. Okay, because if we do that, then what happens is they got that type of rainfall gets into the water table. It doesn't wash off into the drains. It gets into the water table, starts to rebuild that, overcome the drought conditions, and gradually build up our reservoir. When you get these one-off 2 inch events, it helps rebuild the reservoir, but it doesn't get into the groundwater. It just washes right off right into your street drains. So it doesn't address the issue at hand, which is unfortunate drought conditions in place. Let's see. Let's see. Any support of El Nino later this year? I'm not seeing it right now, to be honest with you. Not seeing a lot of strong data. We'll follow back up on that in May and see if we have any other support. But the subsurface really isn't showing much of anything. Neither are any of the models. Any questions on Facebook? No. All right. Well, let's see if we got any more questions, and then we'll probably wrap it up for this week. Okay, it looks like everything's answered here and here. All right, so this, excuse me, losing my voice already. This has been the first official spring version of the live chat. I hope you enjoyed the book and my little rant about the epic stupidity with cop, whatever they want to call it. How about just stupid? Okay. And we went over the cold front that was coming through. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll have the same live chat next week. And of course, all the discussions and our premium public video discussion, which will go over the thunderstorms for this weekend. We'll do that on Friday. As always, thank you for joining us and sending over outstanding questions. I always appreciate it. And as always, stay safe out there.